Okay, so today I'm going to carry on my reading of The Hobbit, and we are now on to chapter 4, which is entitled Over Hill and Under Hill. There were many paths that led up into those mountains, and many passes over them, but most of the paths were cheats and deceptions that led nowhere or to bad ends, and most of the passes were infested by evil things and dreadful dangers. The dwarves and the hobbit, helped by the wise advice of Elrond and the knowledge and memory of Gandalf, took the right road to the right pass. Long days after they had climbed out of the valley and left the last homely house miles behind, they were still going up and up and up. It was a hard path and a dangerous path, a crooked way and a lonely and a long. Now they could look back over the lands they had left, laid out behind them, far below, far, far away in the west, where things were blue and faint. Bilbo knew there lay his own country of safe and comfortable things, and his little hobbit hole. He shivered. It was getting cold up here, and the wind came shrill among the boulders. Rocks, too, at times came galloping down the mountain sides, let loose by midday sun upon the snow, and passed among them, which was lucky, or over their heads, which was alarming. The nights were comfortless and chill, and they did not dare to sing or talk too loudly, for the echoes were uncanny, and the silence seemed to dislike being broken, except by the noise of water, and the wail of wind, and the crack of stone. The summer is getting on down below, thought Bilbo, and haymaking is going on, and picnics. They will be harvesting and blackberrying before we even begin to go down the other side at this rate. And the others were thinking equally gloomy thoughts, although when they had said goodbye to Elrond in the high hope of a midsummer morning, they had spoken gaily of the passage of the mountains and of riding swift across the lands beyond. They had thought of coming to the secret door in the lonely mountain, perhaps the very next last moon of autumn, and perhaps it will be Durin's day, they had said. Only Gandalf had shaken his head, had said nothing. Dwarves had not passed that way for many years, but Gandalf had, and he knew how evil and danger had grown and thriven in the wild, since the dragons had driven men from their lands, and the goblins had spread in secret after the battle of the Mines of Moria. Even the good plans of wise wizards like Gandalf and of good friends like Elrond go astray sometimes, when you are off on a dangerous adventure over the edge of the wild, and Gandalf was a wise enough wizard to know about it. He knew that something unexpected might happen, and he hardly dared to hope that they would pass without fearful adventure over those great tall mountains with lonely peaks and valleys where no king ruled. They did not. All was well until one day they met a thunderstorm. More than a thunderstorm, a thunder battle. You know how terrific a really big thunderstorm can be down in the land and in a river valley, especially at times when two great thunderstorms meet and clash. More terrible still are thunder and lightning in the mountains at night, when storms come up from east and west and make war. The lightning splinters on the peaks, and rocks shiver, and great clashes split the air and go rolling and tumbling into every cave and hollow, and the darkness is filled with overwhelming noise and sudden light. Picture there which I want to show you of the thunderstorm by the looks of it, and that's the mountain pass where Bilbo and the dwarves are on, and there's a thunderstorm in the high peaks of the mountains. Bilbo had never seen or imagined anything of the kind. They were high up on a narrow place, with a dreadful fall into a dim valley at one side of them. They were sheltering under a hanging rock for the night, and he lay beneath a blanket and shook from head to toe. When he peeped out in the lightning flashes, he saw that across the valley the stone giants were out, and were hurling rocks at one another for a game, and catching them, and tossing them down into the darkness, where they smashed among the trees far below, or splintered into little bits with a bang. Then came a wind and a rain, and the wind whipped the rain and the hail about it in every direction, so that an overhanging rock was no protection at all. Soon they were getting drenched, and their ponies were standing with their heads down and their tails between their legs, and some of them were whinnying with fright. They could hear the giants guffawing and shouting all over the mountainside. "This won't do," said Turin. "If we don't get blown off or drowned or struck by lightning, we shall be picked up by some giant and kicked sky high for a football." "Well, you know of anywhere better, take us there," said Gandalf, who was feeling very grumpy and was far from happy about the giants himself. The end of their argument was that they sent Fili and Kili to look for a better shelter. They had very sharp eyes, and being the youngest of the dwarfs by some 50 years, they usually got these sort of jobs, when everybody could see that it was absolutely no use sending Bilbo. "There is nothing like looking if you want to find something," or so Turin said to the young dwarfs. You certainly usually find something if you look, but it is not always quite the something you were after." So proved on this occasion. Soon Fili and Kili came crawling back, holding on to the rocks in the wind. "We have found a dry cave," they said, "not far round the next corner, and ponies and all could get inside." "Have you thoroughly explored it?" said the wizard, who knew that caves up in the mountains were seldom unoccupied. Yes, yes," they said, although everybody knew they could not have been long about it. They had come back far too quick. "It isn't all that big, and it does not go far back." That, of course, is the dangerous part about caves. You don't know how far they can go back, sometimes, or where a passage behind may lead to. What is waiting for you inside? But now, Fili and Kili's news seemed good enough, so they all got up and prepared to move. The wind was howling, and the thunder still growling, and they had a business getting themselves and their ponies along. Still, it was not very far to go, and before long they came to a big rock standing out into the path. If you stepped behind, you found a low arch in the side of the mountain. There was just room to get the ponies through with a squeeze. When they had been unpacked and unsaddled, as they passed under the arch, it was good to hear the wind and the rain outside instead of all about them, and to feel safe from the giants and their rocks. For the wizard was taking no risks. He lit up his wand, as he did that day in Bilbo's dining room that seemed so long ago, if you remember, and by its light they explored the cave from end to end. It seemed quite a fair size, but not too large and mysterious. It had a dry floor and some comfortable nooks. At one end there was room for the ponies, and there they stood, mighty glad of the change, steaming and champing in their nosebags. Orin and Glóin wanted to light a fire at the door to dry their clothes, but Gandalf would not hear of it. So they spread out their wet things on the floor and got dry ones out of their bundles. Then they made their blankets comfortable, got out their pipes, and blew smoke rings, which Gandalf turned into different colours and set dancing up by the roof to amuse them. They talked and forgot about the storm, and discussed what each would do with his share of the treasure when they got it, which at the moment did not seem so impossible. And so they dropped off to sleep one by one, and that was the last time that they used the ponies, packages, baggages, tools, and paraphernalia that they had brought with them. It turned out a good thing that night that they had brought in little Bilbo with them, after all, for somehow he could not go to sleep for a long while, and when he did sleep, he had very nasty dreams. He dreamed that a crack in the wall at the back of the cave got bigger and bigger and opened wider and wider, and he was very afraid, but could not call out or do anything but lie and look. Then he dreamed that the floor of the cave was giving way, and he was slipping, beginning to fall down, goodness knows where to. At that he woke up with a horrible start and found that part of his dream was true. A crack had opened at the back of the cave, and was already a wide passage. He was just in time to see the last of the pony's tails disappearing into it. Of course he gave a very loud yell, as loud as a hobbit can give, which is surprising for their size. Out jumped the goblins, big goblins, great ugly looking goblins, lots of goblins, before you could say rocks and blocks. There were 6 to each dwarf, at least, and 2 even for Bilbo, and they were all grabbed and carried through the crack, before you could say tinder and flint. But not Gandalf. Bilbo's yell had done that much good, it had wakened him up right in a splintered second, and when goblins came to grab him, there was a terrific flash, like lightning, in the cave, a smell like gunpowder, and several of them fell dead. The crack closed with a snap, and Bilbo and the dwarfs were on the wrong side of it. Where was Gandalf? Of that neither they nor the goblins had any idea, and the goblins did not wait to find out. They seized Bilbo and the dwarfs and hurried them along. It was deep, deep, dark, such as only goblins that have taken to living in the heart of the mountains can see through. The passages there were crossed and tangled in all directions, but the goblins knew their way as well as you do to the nearest post office, and the way went down and down. It was most horribly stuffy. The goblins were very rough and pinched unmercifully, and chuckled and laughed in their horrible stony voices. And Bilbo was more unhappy even than when the troll had picked him up by his toes. He wished again and again for his nice bright hobbit hole, not for the last time. Now there came a glimmer of a red light before them. The goblins began to sing or croak, keeping time with the flap of their feet on the stone, and shaking their prisoners as well. Clap, snap, the black crack, grip, grab, pinch, nab, and down, down to Goblin Town you go, my lad. Clash, crash, crush, smash, hammer and tongs, knocker and gongs, pound, pound, far underground, ho, ho, my lad. Swish, smack, rip, crack, batter and beat, yammer and bleat, work, work, nor dare to shirk. Goblins quaff and goblins laugh, round and round, far underground below, my lad. It sounded truly terrifying. The walls echoed to the clap, snap, and the crush, smash, and to the ugly laughter of their ho, ho, my lad. The general meaning of the song was only too plain, for now the goblins took out whips and whipped them with a swish smack, and set them running as fast as they could in front of them, and more than one of the dwarves were already yammering and bleating like anything when they stumbled into a big cavern. It was lit by a great red fire in the middle, and by torches along the walls, and it was full of goblins. They all laughed and stamped and clapped their hands, when the dwarfs, with poor little Bilbo at the back and nearest to the whips, came running in, while the goblin drivers whooped and cracked their whips behind. The ponies were already there, huddled in a corner, and there were all the baggages and packages lying broken open and being rummaged by goblins, and smelt by goblins, and fingered by goblins, and quarrelled over by goblins. I'm afraid that was the last they ever saw of those excellent little ponies, including a jolly sturdy little white fellow that Elrond had led to Gandalf, since his horse was not suitable for the mountain paths. For goblins eat horses and ponies and donkeys and other much more dreadful things, and they are always hungry. Just now, however, the prisoners were thinking of only themselves. The goblins chained their hands behind their backs and linked them all together in a line and dragged them far to the end of the cavern, with little Bilbo tugging at the end of the row. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Okay, part 2 of this chapter will be up as well, so you can carry on this amazing story of Hobbit.